Yeah? Okay, which ones? Okay, see, that's like the little kid in church who is being asked by the Sunday school teacher, okay, what climbs trees and has a gray bushy tail? Nobody answers. And then they say, okay, what goes up trees has a gray bushy tail and eats nuts? And the kid looks at him and says, I know the answer's supposed to be Jesus, but it sounds like a squirrel to me, right? Well, that's like when you say, well, all of them. That means you don't really know, right? It's like you're not really sure. Well, I can tell you your first, your fifth, your ninth, your 10th, your 14th Amendment rights were all violated during that time, not to mention Title 18, 241, 242. I can go on and on about the things that took place during that. So my next question for you is, how many of you filed a petition of grievance to be redressed by your local government who stepped on your constitutional rights?
No, sir.
Nobody?
No, sir.
Well, what have you done that's going to make it so that it doesn't happen again? Anything? No. Okay, so watch. This is why I'm here. The Constitutional Sheriff's Association has been called the Constitutional County. I've been on that bandwagon since 2020 when COVID happened, and people started saying, well, the masks don't work, this is why we shouldn't have to do that. I'm going, wait, no, this is a constitutional issue. This has nothing to do with the effectiveness of masks or vaccines or any of that. It's totally unconstitutional what's being done here. And so the way that you can act locally to deal with that is by creating an ordinance that says, okay, in this county, we are going to have teeth and say, if you violate people's constitutional rights in Volusia County, we're going to punish you with a year in jail and up to $20,000 fine. So let's suppose that you were a business owner and the health department came and said that we're going to close you down. If you have an ordinance in place that says you're a constitutional county, you just get on the phone with the sheriff and say, Sheriff, I got somebody here who's trying to violate my constitutional rights. Would you come down and clear this up for him? Well, then they would march down and they would say, sir, you got a choice here. You either quit trying to violate this man's constitutional rights, or I'm going to take you to jail and I'm going to fine you $20,000. Do you know anybody who's going to try to enforce their thing? Or do you think they're going to go back and talk to their supervisor about never coming back to that place? Okay? So that's the whole point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send down a petition. This is a petition that says you agree that you would like to see us pass an ordinance for the side too. That you would like to see us pass an ordinance. The actual ordinance is in the back of that as well, if you want to read the actual ordinance. But the ordinance, and I'm going to read you basically what the petition says, and the ordinance basically mirrors this. So, the petition says, we, the people of Volusia County, hereby petition our county commission to establish Volusia County as a Bill of Rights sanctuary county. We are committed to having our local law enforcement be empowered to uphold their constitutional duty and act as the lesser magistrate to thwart any efforts of federal, state, local, foreign, or global entities from infringing on the rights given to us by God and upheld by the Constitution of the United States. Our petition. Whereas the Constitution embodies the Bill of Rights protecting citizens' cherished liberties, including the freedom of religion, freedom of speech, the right to peaceably assemble, the right to petition the government for the redress of grievances, the right to bear arms, the right to be secure in their property and possessions, the right against self-incrimination, and the right to due process and fair trials before an impartial jury, and other essential rights and protections necessary for a free people. And whereas the Constitution reserves all powers not specifically granted to the federal government, to the states and the people, and whereas both state and federal governments and bodies have been strictly prohibited from infringing upon the natural rights of the people of the state via both federal and state Bill of Rights, and whereas numerous violations and abuses of these conditions of governmental authority were observed during the 2020 COVID crisis in local, state, and federal executive orders, emergency proclamations, and the like, and to date have not been redressed, it makes it necessary for the Volusia County Commission to enact an ordinance protecting their citizens' constitutional rights and ensuing constitutional compliance, or ensuring constitutional compliance. Whereas the members of this Board of County Commissioners, constitutional officers, and other elected officials of Volusia County have taken a solemn oath to defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, both foreign and domestic. Now, therefore, it be resolved by the undersigned petitioners that we call on Volusia County Board of County Commissioners to pass the proposed Bill of Rights Sanctuary Ordinance with Collier County's ordinance wording, empowering our sheriff and other county officers to protect the God-granted rights of the people of Volusia County as described in the Constitution and provided a means of criminal and civil consequences for violations of these rights within our county's jurisdictions. What that means is that you just went from having your sheriff go from not having jurisdiction to prosecute crimes that are constitutional to now having some teeth that he can actually go after folks and not just ignore unconstitutional orders, but actually be able to enforce the Constitution. That's what you're signing, and that's what we're pushing. And by signing this, by the way, what we're going to be doing is we're getting your contact information so that we can contact you and say, okay, we're going to be having a meeting. The Volusia County commissioners are going to be seeing that. We'd like you to write letters. We'd like you to telephone them. We'd like you to show up if you can, because we're trying to get this passed on such and such a date. Please help us. So that's what this petition is all about. We have a question.
Question being is, can I get some forms or a copy of this so I can get people to sign it that are coming around town?
Absolutely. Just email me, and I will email you a digital copy, and you can make all the copies you'd like.
How do I get them? So I just mail them to you? Or
You can mail them to me. It'd probably be the easiest way, because what I need is I need the physical copies eventually, or you can take pictures.
I'll mail them to you.
Okay.
We'll do it that way, it's safe.
Okay.
I'll make copies and mail them.
And by the way, anybody who wants to participate in that, get a card from me and just email me and say, hey, I'd like to circulate petitions as well and get petitions, because the more signatures, the more people that we have on board with this. Because what I want to do is when the county commission hears the ordinance, I want that room to be packed with people to the point where they're going, what in the world is happening here? Because we've never seen this many people in our commission meeting. So.
It's council.
Council, I'm sorry.
No, but it's serious. If they want to play technical crap with petitions, it's county council, the Van City Commission, the New Samaritan Commission. That's the difference.
Okay.
Just for your knowledge.
It's backward everywhere else, but I don't know.
It's okay. I have to deal with supervisors, county supervisors or county commissioners or county.
No, they're all.
Yeah. But thank you. I appreciate that.
That's if they wanted to nitpick.
Yeah.
Yes, they will.
It's more of the show of support, what it is, because the idea behind this is a petition of show of support, and it's being able to show how many people are on board with this. Because the idea is that if elected officials see that enough people are on board with it, they go, you know what? If we fight this, this could, exactly. This could mean our jobs. Yes.
I just wanted to touch and let you know, please let our guests and members here know that this is not something new, that this is a nationwide effort that we're involved in.
Yeah.
And here in Florida, how many counties have actually signed up to do this?
We actually have 5 counties in Florida that have either signed up for an ordinance or a resolution or a proclamation. We have another 7 that are in process that hopefully this year we'll get that done. And we're working in 37 of the 67 counties overall to try and get this done. We basically use as a gauge the natural progression for this is off of the how many people are familiar with these Second Amendment sanctuary county resolutions that went out from 1990 to current 2020? They're still having some of them go on. What that was is that because of the gun grabs of the Clintons and others, Obama and others, people became aware that their Second Amendment rights were under attack. And so what they did is they borrowed from the sanctuary city for illegal aliens, and they said, well, by God, if we can have a sanctuary city for illegal aliens, by God, we should be able to have a Second Amendment sanctuary city and county for our Second Amendment rights. And so they went on to pass 44 counties in Florida, which is like 2/3, and in the nation, 60% of the states and counties within the states and cities all passed some sort of resolution saying that they are on board with protecting people's Second Amendment rights. The only problem is a resolution is like me saying, golly gee, I really hope that this is something you'll do, whereas an ordinance says, not only this is something we hope that you're going to do, but if you don't, we have consequences, both civilly and criminal, for you not doing so. Okay? And there's a lot of people that say, okay, well, wait a minute, you're usurping the federal government's right because the federal government's supremacy clause says that the federal government is supreme. Yeah, that only works if we're doing something that's unconstitutional, but we're not. We are enforcing the Constitution, which means that we are actually empowering the federal government. So that's not a reason not to do this. So there's a lot of pushback that you'll get on this, but most of it does not make any sense when you look at it. And when you look at Collier County and what they've done with it, they've been able to utilize it in areas like the Live Local Act and other things or the Healthcare Freedom Acts, because they realize that they have the power locally to enforce things that should be constitutional. And so they built on that. And that's what we're doing. We're saying, okay, this ordinance is the beginning for you to have an awareness in your county council of, okay, this is what you need to do to protect people's rights in various areas, like healthcare, like constitutional rights. So, any other questions? Yes?
Yeah, does Volusia County have a Second Amendment ordinance in effect?
The Second Amendment? No, we do not. Volusia County was one of the counties that opted not to.
Oh, wow.
I noticed when I signed my petition right now, Jeff Broward was signed right in front of me.
Yep, Jeff Broward is a big supporter.
So, yeah, but have you ever been to one of those council meetings, how they try to tear Jeff Broward apart when
Yeah.
other people have
Yeah.
office? Yeah, you got some work to do.
What you have to remember is Jeff Broward in 2021 presented something very similar to this to the county council. And they wouldn't even bring it up for a vote. He couldn't get it seconded for a vote. Yes.
Just to be clear, I had a business on Main Street, and I was forcefully shut down during COVID. This would prevent that happening.
That's correct.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
You
because
gotta get these
you
signed.
see, who tried to shut down the health department?
The city shut us down. I had a cigar bar, and it's right on Main Street.
That's
and-
an essential service, right?
It doesn't matter whether it's essential or not. It's a
Yeah,
question of
well,
constitutionality. See,
You know what it's essential for is me paying my bills.
I get it, no, I know, I worked during COVID.
you see, they're violating the Constitution
agree.
by
I
doing
sucked.
those things, right? And so what you have to be able to do is you have to be able to, like for instance, people try to shut down churches, saying, well, you're not in essential services like this. Well, pastors that were in the know, and the police showed up to say that they should shut down, said, excuse me, are you trying to violate my First Amendment rights? Freedom of religion? And the police immediately backed off and said, oh, no, we're just making a suggestion. You know, you can stay with it. But if people went with it, and they went, oh, so we have to shut down? Yep, you sure do. They shut down. Okay, it's very much like, how many people were told that if you don't get a vaccine, you're not going to work? Anybody like that? They told me that at my job, and I said, listen, I have a religious exemption. I wrote a 4-page letter that basically outlined exactly why. They called me back and said, you know, we don't know if we're going to honor that. I said, no, you don't understand. I have a religious exemption, and if you don't honor it, that's on you, because I will sue you. I never heard from them again. Okay? So that's the kind of thing that if you know, but I can't tell you how many people were pressured into getting that vaccine.
And that vaccine
Oh,
for a lot of
yeah,
people.
and then they regret it.
Yeah.
Sorry, there's vaccine.
So this is really not about vaccine or no vaccine. This is more about what's constitutional and what's not. And that's what we're trying to push here, is we're trying to get back to our constitutional republic and reclaim that. This is a first step in doing so. Thank you. I took way too much time.
That's okay, thank you.
We're going to have a quick word from Duncan DeMarsh. Get that right?
Good evening, everyone. My name's Duncan DeMarsh. I was invited to attend here by your state chairman, Peter Karakis, since I was about 10 years old. I think that's where I first met Peter, and I watched him grow this organization across the state to what it's become. I'm a proud dues-paying member of the Florida Republican Assembly at the West Volusia chapter. I live over in DeLand, and I'm the vice chair of our Republican Executive Committee. I'm just here to support you, to learn from some very exciting people, and to continue to represent you on our executive committee and to fight for our shared conservative values. Thanks for all you do, and I'm excited to hear from our wonderful guest speaker.
Duncan, can you tell us anything about the legislative session? He's chief legislative aide to Congressman Chase Tremont.
I'm an employee of the Florida legislature. I work for Representative Chase Tremont. We spent 9 or 10 months writing a fantastic election integrity bill that would ensure only citizens vote in our elections. and it was never heard. So that's one of the things I love about the Republican Assembly. You all are not afraid to fight for what's right, even if you're fighting alone. That's what we intend to do in the state capitol. We want to introduce conservative legislation. We want to further the principles of the American Revolution. We want to fight for what you believe in, regardless if House leadership will hear it or not. So we appreciate you. We're on your side, and we're fighting as hard as we can. Thank you.
Okay, now I'd like to introduce our speaker, Stephen Friend. I don't know if everybody's familiar with Mr. Friend, but he's got a spine of steel. The stuff this man has gone through to protect our rights and to hold powers that be accountable. It's an honor to have him here. Mr. Friend.
I'm going to try to project. We're going to record so others that couldn't be here can get a chance to hear what I'm going to talk about. I've got some new information in light of the fact that we've had an election and we've had some new appointments inside of the government, and I'm a big believer in bringing the information to people that I live close by to. I live in Port Orange. This is my home. Before I start though, I went to Collier County and I spoke for that Bill of Rights Sanctuary County ordinance, and it was a slog. And we knew we had a favorable representation there. They put it second on the agenda, next to pickleball courts. They went first. Pickleball courts took us past lunch because they had over 40 speakers, and then it was my turn to speak. We got 3 minutes. There were 2 people that stayed the entire time to cede me their time so I could speak for 9 minutes. That's real citizenship. Those people have my eternal gratitude, and it did pass. So that set the standard here for us, hopefully going forward in this state. I mean, there's no excuse that we can't pass it in this county, and I'll be there to speak for it anytime. So, quick background on me, FBI whistleblower, FBI recovering special agent. I worked for the FBI starting in 2014. Was working on Indian reservations in Nebraska. Was assigned to Sioux City, Iowa, northwest Iowa, right on the border. Did that pretty effectively. Had a really rare, unique experience inside the FBI because I got to do what you see on TV and movies, and that is put bad guys in jail. I arrested 150 people in 7 years, which, if you're a local cop, is rookie numbers. But if you're in the FBI, it's serious because most FBI agents actually never arrest anyone in their entire career. Little known fact. Transferred here to this area to work for the Daytona Beach Resident Agency, which is a satellite office for Jacksonville, to work child pornography and human trafficking matters. Was reassigned a few months later, told that that's not a priority for the FBI. You need to work on January 6th, which is the most important investigation in the history of the country. Looked at those cases and realized that there were some problems with what was going on. We were messing with the terrorism stats nationwide, creating this false narrative. And we were also making the process the punishment for so many people. We were sending a SWAT team to arrest somebody who said, look, I'll cooperate with you if you need me to do anything, if you need me to surrender, whatever you want me to do. We waited a year and a half, and then we were going to send a SWAT team to his house at 6 o'clock in the morning. So I brought those concerns up my chain of command, and they escorted me out of the building about 30 days after that. They said that I lacked loyalty to the country. So that was September of 2022, and today is day 975 of being unpaid, unemployed, and seemingly unemployable at the moment. So that's my quick and dirty story. I'm not really here to talk about that too much. I want to give you the guys the lowlights of actually what's still going on. I know there's a lot of hope, maybe a little bit too much hopium since the election, and I am keying in on making sure people are aware that we didn't win the Super Bowl in November. We didn't even win the coin toss to the Super Bowl in November. we're still in 2 days. It's time to be working and pressuring people in our position to make the changes that we sent a mandate for in November. That message has not been received. So the theme that I want to talk about with this subject is leadership. And not just a change at the top. Okay? It's a culture of leadership problem that exists in the FBI. My kids finished school yesterday. My oldest son had a book report recently, and he had one of my favorite Americans in our history to read a book about, who was Ulysses S. Grant. And I love U.S. Grant because his entire life was based on overcoming adversity and being a leader at the right time, the right way, for the right reasons. And he got done reading that book, and it was a 5th grade book, so it wasn't really overly complicated. And because I'm a history nerd, I made him sit down and I told him some extra stuff just for his own knowledge and edification. And I told him about the Battle of the Wilderness, which is my favorite U.S. Grant story, during which Ulysses S. Grant takes command of the entire army. He happens to come across Robert E. Lee in the Battle of the Wilderness. And in the course of 2 days, takes 17,000 casualties. The gun smoke was so thick in the air that the soldiers could not see the hands in front of their face. And this is the first major engagement he has. And up to that point, the Army of the Potomac in the East had had 0 success against Robert E. Lee. They had had a conflict, and then they had backed away. They'd gone back north to refit, to reorganize, and rethink what they were going to do. So after this engagement, Ulysses Grant has this moment. Is he going to go back north, or is he going to turn and go south? So he rode his horse to the front of the column past this army that had taken all these casualties. And without saying a word, he turned them to the south. And the remark that I always remember to bring up is that General Longstreet said, who was a chief lieutenant for Lee, at that moment they knew that Ulysses Grant was going to fight every day until the end of the war. There was chanting and singing amongst the Union Army, and these are guys who are going to get marched to their certain death, many of them. Because for the first time in 3 years, they actually saw leadership. That's what the value of leadership is. So let's talk about the culture or lack of a culture of leadership that exists in the FBI. And it starts in the very beginning. You get hired by the FBI, you're a special agent, congratulations. You get sent to Quantico, Virginia. You go to the FBI Academy. And right from the outset, they set it up to be a washout program. Now, the graduation rate out of Quantico is like 98, 99%. It's not buds for Navy SEALs. But it was intended to be a training program for people who were vetted as meritorious and capable of being criminal investigators for the federal government. We're just going to teach them the skills that they need. Sometime, though, around 2014, when James Comey was the director of the FBI, he said, we're going to make it a washout program. And we're going to do that because we're going to up our diversity hiring. And these people might not be meritorious, they might not be capable, but we'll wash them out in the academy. If they can't cut it, then they'll be gone. But that's a square peg in a round hole. And in order to do that, they set up every single thing you do to be a test. So from the very beginning, you're in a compromised position. You think, whatever I do, it's for my job. I can't afford to step out of line. It also creates a lot of training stalls. So you go into Hogan's Alley, which is this pretend city that they actually built for you. They hire professional actors to be role players, and you interface with them as you're the FBI, they're the American citizen, but it's not realistic. Now, I was a police officer before, so I kind of knew what I was doing, to talk to people, to create safe distance if need be, but really just gain information from them. Most people going to the FBI Academy weren't law enforcement before. And they set it up to be an assessment, so they will do things like you go into a house and you walk past a door where there is a false wall in the door, and someone jumps out and shoots you in the back of the head. Well, I'm like Abbott and Costello pulled down on the lamp and the wall slides. Completely unrealistic. And for the former cop, I just kind of shake my head and move on because I know that that is not realistic. But for the person who is a rookie to law enforcement, they believe that that will happen at any given moment. And they start to look at the American people as not their customers, the people who they're supposed to protect against fraud and force, but as someone who could put one in the back of their head. It's actually us versus them. And that's not what is in keeping with what law enforcement is about. You're also taught that the number one lesson in the FBI, the number one rule, you do not embarrass the FBI. You can survive arrest for driving under the influence. You can survive an arrest for domestic battery. You can survive an arrest for getting into a shootout with police. All have happened. You can survive having child pornography on your computer, as long as the public doesn't know. Now, the public became aware of me, which is why I'm 975 days out of the FBI. Really, the most significant thing, and it might be my enduring legacy of my FBI career, is you get to go to the Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington, D.C. You take the field trip, you go to the MLK Memorial, you go to the Holocaust Memorial, and there you see the Niemöller poem. First they came for the trade unionists, then the socialists, then the Jews, and at every gambit, I said nothing. And then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. It's a really critical lesson. It's never acceptable to just follow orders. You have to throw the flag if you see something wrong. I think my legacy will be they'll probably cancel that field trip. All right. So now we graduate. We're pushed out into the field. I am from Savannah, Georgia. I was a police officer there for 5 years. I have contacts. I still have contacts in agencies all around that area. There was actually an opening in that area for an FBI special agent. So naturally, the FBI sent me to Sioux City, Iowa. When I met James Comey at my graduation, he was the director, so he handed me my badge and my credentials. I shook his hand. He's like 6'8". I like to say that he looks like a middle finger in whatever group of people he's standing around. He asked me, where are you from? Savannah, Georgia. Where are we sending you? Sioux City, Iowa. And he laughed. So that doesn't make a lot of sense. No, sir, it doesn't. But it does make a lot of sense. Because I was married, and at the time we had a newborn child. And we got sent to the middle of a cornfield where we had no friends and no family, no support structure except for the people that I worked with that I hoped were going to be my friends. We were immediately compromised. You sure you want to embarrass the Bureau? You sure you want to just not follow orders this time? Because you could be fired, you could be stuck in the middle of nowhere with no resources. It's very intentional that they set you up to be compromised. Now, once you're out there, you become educated and indoctrinated into something that I've railed about for the last 32 months, and that is the FBI quota system, IPM, Integrated Program Management, which dictates the number of cases you have to open, the tools you have to use, the intelligence products that have to be written, the arrests that you have to have. You have to hit the quota. If you don't hit the quotas, then the boss can't get his bonus, which is somewhere in the area of about $30,000 to $50,000 that your boss is pressuring you to arrest the right number of people so that he can get that bonus. Which would be interesting to a defense attorney, to be able to ask an agent if he ever testifies at trial, did your boss get a bonus because you arrested my client? Well, they keep that one pretty close to the vest. They also really compartmentalize what you do. Now, when I ultimately got removed, the FBI is, think of it like a pyramid. The very top, small group of people are in charge. As you go down to the bottom of the pyramid, it's a lot of people. They can give you a very minute, granular duty. And because of that, you could delude yourself into thinking you're not doing anything wrong. So for the January 6th subject that they were sending the SWAT team to his house, my actual job that day was to drive him. The SWAT team was going to go arrest him. They're going to put him in my car, and my job was to drive him to court and drop him off. I was just Uber. I was a taxi. So when I raised objections to everything we were doing, they said, you're not doing anything illegal, unethical, immoral. You're just driving someone who's already been arrested. And I said, that's no different than me putting him on the cattle car. I'm not dropping the Zyklon B into the gas chamber, but I'm part of that process. And it was revelatory to the people that I was talking to. They had never considered, or at least they represented that to me. They had never contemplated that we could be part of some sort of weaponized system. But again, these were guys and gals who were indoctrinated from the time that they started with the FBI to believe that they were an elite, premier law enforcement agency, and how dare you question their integrity? After all, the motto of the FBI is fidelity, bravery, and integrity. Just ask them, and they'll tell you how much integrity they have. Ask James Comey about how much integrity he has when he was walking on the beach and just happens upon seashell collection.
Yeah.
The last one, culturally, in management. The culture within management is completely broken. It's not leadership, it's management. If you look at anyone in the FBI who's in the upper echelons, you look at their resume, and prior to Kash Patel and Dan Bongino taking over, they used to publish a press release when somebody was promoted. They don't do that anymore. And the reason they don't do that anymore is not for good reasons, which we'll get to. But you see on the resume of this person who's been promoted that they have about 5 years of actual experience investigating crime in the FBI. You do 5 years, and then you start the promotion. The promotions have to come every 18 months. You have to get promoted to the next level, to the next level, to the next level. And if you don't, you're stuck where you're at. And you're typically stuck doing managerial work of something in which you have no experience in, no subject matter expertise in. Your passion isn't in doing what you are assigned to do. Your passion is in getting to the next thing. It's a revolving door of people who have no knowledge. So they're in a conundrum. They have no subject matter expertise. And look, anecdotal, program manager, Washington, D.C., would give me a call every 18 months. Brand new program manager. Want to introduce myself. I'm looking over your shoulder here, what you're doing on the Indian reservations. That's great. What's your background? Oh, I've never been to an Indian reservation. I'm really excited for you to tell me what it is that you do.
Oh my God.
For 18 months, then they promote. So how do you promote? Well, you invent a solution and then look for a problem. Think about it. It's very government, right? Again, an anecdote. My frontline supervisor at one point came to me and she said, Steve, I'm really interested in sexual molestations of children on the reservations. I want to data mine what we have to see if we can set something up. Can you give me a list of questions that you think would be really important for us to pull out this information? I said, yes, boss, and I gave her a list of questions. And she came back to me, she said, that's great. It's too many questions though. Can you get it down to 5? Because that would fit on one PowerPoint slide really well. Yes, boss, that's great. Condense it down to 5 questions. She said, all right, Steve, now I want you to go and ask every one of your child molestation victims these questions. And I said, the new ones that come in or the ones that we are currently working with? And she said, well, all of them. I said, well, I can't go back. Because if I go back and ask our victims these questions, that's another interview. I have to document that. And these are young kids. What if they say something that contradicts what they did before, and then we have a hard time actually prosecuting a case? It's been, some time has passed, their memory might be foggy, and my boss said, that's okay, Steve, just don't write it down. Oh, I didn't follow that. And she promoted before the program got here. Now let's talk about the national security mission, which is the problem, and the reason that I referenced the Niemöller poem. Anybody see the movies, the Terminator movies? Skynet. Skynet in the Terminator franchise is artificial intelligence. It's not good and it's not bad. It's just ones and zeros. It's computer programming. But in the movie, Skynet becomes self-aware. And it comes to the conclusion that its enemy is anyone that can unplug it. So it turns on people, right? which is why we have 2 awesome movies, and then the other ones we just forget that they were ever made because they were awful. That sounds a lot like a bureaucracy, right? So national security, September 10th, 2001. National security mission in this country was, in the event of an attack, we accept the fact that we live in the land of the free, and there are certain inherent risks associated with that. In the event of something going bang, we will protect the Constitution, civil rights, and do our best to pursue the evildoers. Then we had September 11th, and the people of this country were put for a decision. Do you want freedom, or do you want security? And we chose security. And Benjamin Franklin said, in that case, you deserve neither, which is exactly what we got. We got a zero-fail mission from the FBI. No American can ever die at the hands of a terrorist ever again. We have to be ahead of the curve. It can never go boom. That's a zero-fail mission that requires tyranny, and it's still impossible. And very much like Skynet, the FBI, as a bureaucracy, its success is in growth. Getting more funding, more material, more capabilities, more personnel. So it evolved, or it really devolved its national security mission to say, anyone who wants to take those away from us, they're the real enemy. So we can go after them. So let's work our way through the Niemöller poem. First, we went after legitimate terrorists, right? Bad actors who were using their political beliefs and violent actions to bring about fear in the hopes of creating political change. But there's really not that many of them. So we started going after homegrown violent extremists. They were inspired by foreign terrorist organizations, but really they were just Muslim Americans who we entrapped. And that wasn't good enough. So we went after domestic violent extremists. And there are subsets of those, like militia violent extremists, and moms at school board meetings who were unhappy with the curriculum, who were instilling fear in the school board members. People who have a Betsy Ross flag, or a Gadsden flag, or support the Second Amendment, or the new one, which is anti-government, anti-authority, violent extremist, AGAVE, which the FBI, Department of Homeland Security, published a strategic intelligence assessment in detail in 2021. Who was president? And it details what an agave is. An agave is someone who has a perception of government overreach, or negligence, or illegitimacy. Not and, or. So overreach, like putting a diaper on your face to fly, might be overreach. Negligence, allowing 50 million illegal aliens to come in the country, might be negligent. Illegitimacy, do you have questions about one guy was winning the election and we all went to bed, we woke up and the other guy won the election? Now you're a domestic terrorist. You can go after it. And because of the Patriot Act, because we operate for security, the FBI can use what's called an assessment. An assessment is a fancy word for means it's a case. It's an investigation. The FBI doesn't need an allegation of criminal action. It doesn't need probable cause. It doesn't need reasonable suspicion. It just needs any articulable purpose to open an assessment of you. It doesn't even require a supervisor to approve it. So the agent opens it up because you said something on Facebook about not wanting to wear a mask. You're probably an agave, an anti-government extremist. Oh, we got a quota for those? Don't close that case out. You better find something. Now, how does that rear its head in the most ugly fashion? I alluded to entrapments of Muslim Americans. Entrapments of Americans, we'll say. Now, we can go all the way back to the early 2000s, or we can just go to the last year. And I got some good examples. I like to call this the FBI playbook. The FBI playbook for national security is basically, you find a vulnerable person. Someone who is low intelligence, someone who is financially indigent, mentally disturbed, down on their luck, desperate. And you groom them. You provoke them with informant. and then introduce them to an undercover, and you get them to agree to do their worst idea, which they were never predisposed to do or capable of doing, but for the involvement of the FBI. And then, as long as it takes months, mostly years, as soon as they agree to do something, there's the trap. The trap goes off, and we got our terrorist. Career case. Let me give you some examples. Skylar Philippi, last year, Nashville, Tennessee. Skylar Philippi told an informant that he wanted to go do a mass shooting at a YMCA. I don't think I want to be friends with Skylar. The problem, though, is a mass shooting is not a federal crime. The informant should have brought that to the Nashville Police Department. But then that informant's not going to get paid, because the informant has to get paid by the FBI. So instead, the informant introduced Skylar to another informant. And they got Skylar drunk. And then they introduced Skylar to not one, not two, but 3 undercover FBI agents. So now we have 5 agents of the United States government, and miraculously, Skylar Philippi changes his plan. He doesn't want to do a mass shooting at a YMCA anymore. He wants to take down the entire electrical grid for the United States of America by flying a 3D printed drone, which he's no subject matter in creating, connected to 3 pounds of C4, which he has no access to, into an electrical substation in one neighborhood in Nashville, Tennessee, for the price of $150. Skylar's in prison as a domestic terrorist right now. Brad Spafford. Brad Spafford comes from Virginia. He had a shooting buddy. The problem for Brad was that his shooting buddy was an informant for the FBI. And the informant went to the FBI and said that Brad had a mangled hand because of homemade bomb making on July 4th. He blew his finger off with a firework. But that was good enough for the informant to get paid, so he went to the FBI. And then the FBI encouraged him, just go shooting, keep go shooting. And then a year goes by, and the informant comes back to the FBI and says that Brad has a go box. The go box contains emergency food, and medicine, and ammunition. And that's an indicator of domestic terrorism to the FBI. And eventually, Brad tells a shooting buddy that he has a short barrel rifle, which is in Virginia, where they apparently don't have the Second Amendment. It's unregistered because Brad believes in the Second Amendment and didn't register his SBR. So the FBI sent a SWAT team with a helicopter and flashbanged it at 6 o'clock in the morning for a $200 tax stamp. He's in jail right now as a domestic terrorist. Cole Bridges. Cole Bridges was 19 years old, and he was online talking about ISIS in 2019. Cole Bridges is retarded. I could say retarded because Trump is president. Cole Bridges was talking about ISIS in 2019 because he didn't know that ISIS was in 2017 when Trump was president, right? He has no knowledge of Al-Qaeda or Al-Shabaab or Boko Haram. He just knows what is the most recent terrorist thing he wants to get involved in. But he gets a friend online who's an informant. And the informant encourages Cole to join the United States Army. Which means that either the FBI withheld this information from the Department of Defense or colluded with the Department of Defense to get Cole Bridges into the United States Army, into basic, through training, and onto a cavalry unit. And then he continued his conversations with ISIS. But it wasn't ISIS, it was an FBI undercover the entire time. And Cole told this ISIS person about how he would take down New York City, even though he'd never been to New York. He told him how to take out special forces, even though he wasn't a member of special forces. But Cole's in prison right now as a domestic terrorist, likely coerced to join the military so they could get a headline that they popped a member of the military for being an ISIS sympathizer. I'll give you one more, because you probably all heard about this one. His name is Asif Merchant. He was a Iranian who came through Pakistan, he was a Pakistani who came through Iran and wanted to do an assassination plot around the time of Butler, right? That's how we all heard from the politicians that Iran might have been involved in the Butler assassination plot. The assassination happened July 13th. Asif was arrested July 12th. So it would seem that the assassination never would have happened, but it was close enough that they figured they could get away with it. What had happened with Asif? He came to Dallas, Texas, and was allowed entry into the United States, not because he was a terrorist who we knew and we said, we can't get him in Iran, we'll have him fly here and we'll arrest him. No, the FBI Dallas office allowed him to enter into the United States, gave him permission, and then allowed him to travel to New York for several months, where he was riding around with undercover agents, trying to recruit hitmen in nightclubs in New York City. Because Asif had this great plan where he was going to recruit dozens of people to carry on fake protests outside of random politicians' houses, while some female infiltrated those houses, like Mission Impossible style, through the ceiling, to get classified material that they obviously had around their house. And then he was going to hire hitmen to go do a rotating rounds of assassinations of multiple American politicians for the low, low price of $500, which he did not have. He was going to have to call his cousin. He was arrested on July 12th, 2024. See the playbook? Project Salam did a study of FBI counterterrorism cases. This is a left-leaning source. They found that 92% of FBI counterterrorism cases that ended in arrest involved someone who was not predisposed or capable of actually carrying out the attack. All right. So who's excited about Dan Bongino again? Yes. Absolutely. I'm sorry, I'm about to make you really upset. Who watched the Fox News interview with Maria Bartiromo over the weekend? Cash Patel did, and Dan Bongino did. We didn't lose the fight to win the FBI at that interview. They just acknowledged that the fight's already lost. That fight's gone. It's lost. The only route now is to absolutely shatter the agency into a million pieces and scatter it to the wind. Now, let me give you some inside information, okay? So if you know, you know, having watched that interview. Because they came off, to the layperson, pretty well. So in the lead up to that, we had the Epstein list debacle, right? We demanded the Epstein list, and we had James Dennehy, the assistant director in charge of New York, refused to hand it over, so he was forced to retire and collect his pension, and he walked out to a bagpipe ceremony and a color guard ceremony, and hundreds of people giving him a standing ovation. Before Cash Patel became the director, there was an acting director whose name was Brian Driscoll. Brian Driscoll refused the director to hand over all the employees who worked on January 6th to the Department of Justice. He said, I'll stand in the gap, I'm not doing it. He's been promoted. During the interview over the weekend, Maria Bartiromo asked a very good question about the promotion of Stephen Jensen. Stephen Jensen, who was the section chief of the Domestic Terrorist Operations Section for January 6th. He, by his own telling to Congress, is the architect of the way the FBI responded to January 6th. He was then moved over to the training unit to launder him, then moved down to Columbia, South Carolina, and Cash Patel promoted him to become the assistant director in charge of Washington Field Office. And that's why they don't put out the press releases anymore. Because that was a, oh no, that was a mistake. You guys promoted the J6 warlord. And the first thing they said was, well, he knows where the bodies are buried. He'll be able to give us this. And I'm sorry that doesn't pass muster for a couple of reasons. One being, if you know where the bodies are buried, you get to make a deal of you don't get to go to prison. You don't get promoted. By that logic, we should just make Christopher Wray the director of the FBI because he knows where the bodies are buried. And the other thing is, he doesn't know the intricacies of the investigations going on because he's very removed from that. He's the section chief. Okay? He's not working the cases. He is crafting what the strategic response is going to be. So it just didn't make sense. And what Cash said was that Stephen Jensen represented everything the American people should want in the FBI. And that is someone who saw what was going on and raised his concerns up the chain of command, but ultimately followed orders. He just followed orders. They also talked about building a brand new headquarters. I thought we were going to shut down the Hoover building and turn it into a museum of the deep state. Kash Patel said he needed 20 people to run the FBI. He's moving 1,500 people out of the Washington, D.C. area. There's 11,000 there. So that means there's 9,500 people still in the swamp, which is 25% of the FBI's workforce. And he had the temerity to say that if you work for the premier law enforcement institution like the FBI, you deserve a building that reflects that, one that's safe. He used the same language that Christopher Wray, James Comey used when they argued for a brand new headquarters. Because he's being run by the FBI. He's being managed by the FBI, as was our fear the entire time, that both he and Dan Bongino would get there and they would instantly be bubble wrapped and distracted. And the reason I know they're bubble wrapped and distracted is because Dan Bongino said that every day I walk in, there are 100 level 10 things to handle. First of all, level 10 is not a thing, because I'm familiar with integrated program management. And there's only 3 banded threats, not 10. So he's just either ignorant, which he is, because he doesn't know the FBI. He's being fed things. And my immediate question is, why? You have 100 things on your desk. Who put them there? The FBI put them there. Because they've convinced Kash Patel and Dan Bongino that they need to be intricately involved in the cases that are going on. Dan said, do you want a bomb to go off in New York? Do you want a bomb to go off in Washington, D.C.? Deputy Director Bongino, Director Patel, that's not your job. Your job is to set a vision. Your job is to prioritize what has to go on, to make policy decisions. But instead you're worried about cases that are going on in New York and Washington, D.C. And the reason that I can tell you that it's not their job is pretty simple. There's an organizational chart that I'll recite to you right now. You have the agent, the brick agent, right? Working the case. He reports to a squad supervisor, who reports to an assistant special agent in charge, who reports to a special agent in charge, who then takes it over to headquarters and talks to a program manager, who reports to an assistant unit chief, who reports to a unit chief, who reports to an assistant section chief, who reports to a section chief, who reports to a deputy assistant director, who reports to an assistant director, who reports to an executive assistant director, who reports to a deputy director, who reports to a director. That's 13 derivatives. He doesn't need to be making a recommendation about we should go collect evidence or interviewing somebody. That's not his job, but he thinks it is because he's being run by the FBI. What are we getting done? We're getting new headquarters. We're getting UFC fighters that are possibly going to be teaching defensive tactics because they think that ground and pound works to get people into custody rather than get you into a civil rights case. And Bongino have arranged for themselves to be issued firearms because they're cool guys who have badges now. They're guys that have 20 to 30 man protective details and they think they need to have a gun to be in the fight. Kash Patel abuses his jet privileges. He flies to every UFC battle. He assigns his protective detail to protect his girlfriend. She's an aspiring country music star in Nashville. We had the announcement about Operation Restore Justice, where we went after the kids who were child sex abuse victims. We're getting all the pedophiles. Remember that? It was like a week or so ago. Great job. You know it was called Operation Cross Country last year and the prior 20 years? They just changed the name. Been going on for 2 decades. Nothing new. Same thing as always. We had the big announcement of the FBI top 10 most wanted arrests that they got. He's been in custody for over a year. They put him on the list so they could announce they got an FBI top 10. I'm 975 days. One of my best buddies is Garrett O'Boyle. He's 968 days indefinitely suspended, unpaid for children. I'll be fully transparent with you right now. Kash Patel has looked me in the eye and told me he'd make my life right. He'd do right by me and bring me back to the FBI. Dan Bongino called me and said, I want you on my team. They have not talked to me since they got in. The fight's lost, folks. The fight to take back the FBI is over. The only hope we have about the slippery slope that we saw during the Biden administration where the FBI was weaponized against you because you wanted to unplug Skynet, we got to get rid of Skynet. So how are we going to do that? Because I don't have any faith in the Republicans in Congress to defund the FBI as much as I told them to their faces that they have to do it. What can we pressure via our voices on social media, maybe our elected officials, maybe just getting loud so the president, who seems to actually have a knack for listening to his base, might put a little bit of pressure on his FBI director to do something that he could do. So we got to end the quota system. Cash Patel could do that right now. Stroke of a pen. Over. We need to end the intelligence collection, because it's an intelligence agency that collects intelligence on the American people. Thanks to Executive Order 12333, which was amended by Barack Obama, the FBI has unfettered access to everything that the NSA hoovers up on all of us and doesn't need a warrant. Same thing with FISA 702, they can collect on you. Now, we're blessed here because there's only 35,000 employees, so the likelihood that you're being surveilled is very low, but you're all being collected on. But there's artificial intelligence that's going to get brought in, it's going to be able to surveil you at all times. Not to mention that you have software like Overwatch, which does the playbook. It's artificial intelligence bots that go on the internet to find vulnerable people and get them to do their worst ideas. We need to actually have some participation with Congress, turning things over. And I know Cash said that they turned things over about the January 6th and about the assassination attempts. It's all the same stuff that's going to be in the OIG report, nothing new. We need to have new agents, that they come through, actually go do work for police departments. Get assigned to work in the criminal investigative division of a police department or a sheriff's office, so they can learn to be a cop after having matriculated through Quantico, where they thought that the wall was going to drop down and they were going to get shot in the back of the head. We need to have a full audit of every counterterrorism case. Every single terrorism case. Why did you open this case? Is it because someone said that they had questions about an election? We need to do a full audit. Everybody along the chain that approved it, it's gone. And we can get rid of them the same way they got rid of me. They suspended my security clearance. Can't be an FBI agent without security clearance. My security clearance was suspended because I lacked loyalty to the United States government, because the FBI said I looked at the FBI employee handbook improperly. That's the actual justification. They said I looked at the employee handbook improperly, so here I am 975 days later. The last one, instead of giving Cash Patel and Dan Bongino guns, how about we take all the guns away from all of the agents? The FBI was actually invented as a Bureau of Investigation in 1908, no guns. Their prime directive was to aid and assist local and state law enforcement entities with subject matter expertise, technological, scientific prowess. Why don't we go back to that? Let's empower the local police. They're the real police anyway. You take away the guns, you don't have to worry about the SWAT team coming, because there isn't a SWAT team. And also, if we don't get rid of the quota system, the sheriff's going to put a stop to that, because he's going to say, if I go after moms at school board meetings, I'm going to get booted out of office. But instead, I'm going to go after some Tren de Aragua members, some drug dealers. Why don't you help me with that? It empowers local police, which is the best way to do it. I'm going to close it out with my friends and I. All suspended FBI whistleblowers were the Suspendables. I thought of the name because we all had an interesting set of skills, kind of like the Expendables from the movie franchise, but we're the Suspendables because we're all suspended indefinitely forever. And we have a verse of choice, which is Isaiah 6:8. Then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, "Whom shall I send, and who will go for us?" And I said, "Here am I, send me." I got a really bum rap 975 days ago. That verse is not about someone who's jumping out of their chair, send me. That's just saying I'm available for casting. That bum rap was a giant neon sign to me and my friends that we had to do what we're doing right now, or whatever the cost is. Now, people in this room, you likely didn't get that type of a neon sign, but that doesn't mean that it hasn't presented itself to you, or it won't in the future. But when it does, you're going to have to do what Ulysses S. Grant did. And that's what James Longstreet feared, and that is fight every day until the end of the war. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, real quick note, our next meeting, where it will go, I believe our next meeting is gonna be down at, the church at the end of the property. There's a building on the other side of the property. We'll be meeting down there next month to